Hello, friends. I'm Kathy Fay, Executive Director of the Boston Early Music Festival, or BEMF, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this very special pre-concert talk prior to the upcoming concert on our 2025-2026 concert series featuring the extraordinary vocal ensemble Stile Antico on Friday, November 7th at St. Paul Church in Harvard Square, Cambridge, Massachusetts. A perennial favorite of BEMF audiences and one of the most accomplished and sought-after Renaissance vocal groups in the world today. We're so proud to welcome back Stile Antico for their 13th appearance on the BEMF annual concert season. This dynamic, self-directed ensemble of 12 singers made their North American debut at the 2009 Boston Early Music Festival to great critical acclaim. This year marks their 20th anniversary, and in celebration of this major achievement, they have prepared a program honoring the quincentenary of Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina, the prince and father of music, and the undisputed master of Stile Antico, the style from which the ensemble takes its name. It is my honor to introduce our three guests, all members of Stile Antico: soprano Kate Ashby, tenor Benedict Hymas, and bass Gareth Thomas. Kate, Ben, Gareth, thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to hearing more about your vision and motivation for this extraordinary program. It was just a few weeks ago when I saw you, actually late August, twice in concert at the Utrecht Early Music Festival in the Netherlands. When I consider the number of Stile Antico concerts I have attended over the years, I guess you could call me a bona fide groupie. But I must say your astonishing and beautifully constructed programs are always a highlight for me, and I'm sure the upcoming BEMF concert will be no exception. Before I turn the microphone over to the three of you, for those wishing to attend our Friday, November 7th performance by Stile Antico, tickets are still available and can be purchased online by visiting the BEMF website, bemf.org, or calling the BEMF office, 617-661-1812. For those unable to attend our performance on Friday, November 7th, virtual tickets are on sale as well. Our virtual presentation premieres on Saturday, November 22nd, and will be available for a 2-week period through and including Saturday, December 6th, 2025. I should also mention that if you'd like to learn more about the program by Stile Antico, you'll find the program itself, program notes, text translations, a bit more about the group, all on our website again, bemf.org. Finally, my heartfelt thanks to Andrew Siegel for his leadership support of the virtual presentation by Stile Antico. All of us at BEMF are so grateful to Andrew, as well as our many friends and fans around the world who attend and support our in-person and virtual performances. If you'd like to learn more about concert sponsorships, once again, visit our website, bemf.org. With that, I will now disappear from the screen and turn the discussion over to the three of you. My thanks to all of you for attending this pre-concert talk. I look forward to seeing you at the concert on Friday, November 7th. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy. It's such a pleasure for us to come to Boston. Every time we come, it feels like coming back home. And as often is the case, this is our first stop on a sort of 2-week America tour. So it's often the very first place we come to in the States. And it's just so wonderful for us to be back in that glorious acoustic at St. Paul's and in front of such a knowledgeable and enthusiastic audience. So we're really looking forward to sharing our Palestrina program with you. It's one that we've been touring a lot this year. We had a disc that came out at the beginning of the year, and that was one of a series of recordings we made on Decca. So this program came about partly because of the suggestion from Decca, from Helen Lewis at Decca, that we made a trilogy of recordings starting in 2021 with the Josquin anniversary disc, and then Bird in 2023, and then this year Palestrina in 2025, 500 years since his birth. So each of those was marking an anniversary of one of the sort of flagship composers of the Renaissance. And I think it's probably fair to say that quite a few of us were thinking, oh, not that interested in Palestrina really, but we've got to do it to complete the trilogy really. And I think a lot of us have had our minds changed by the wonderful repertoire that we've explored through the course of this year, and that there's actually he wrote a lot, and what we know him for is his perfect style that many of us had to imitate at university. But actually, there's a lot more depth to it, and this program has given us a real opportunity to explore his life, his work, his legacy, what came before him, and the sort of really wide-ranging emotional depths that he explored. So with Gareth and Ben, now I'm just going to. I thought it would be useful for us to talk you through the program. Gareth and Ben, do you have any particular words you want to add at the beginning while I go for the screen sharing?
I was just going to say, lots of us obviously had sung Palestrina in church choir settings where, there's never quite enough time to rehearse and it's all a bit sort of rushed through and it's kind of, all the notes are there, but you don't really get into the real depth of the music. And I think it's one of the wonderful things about singing with Stile is that we do have a chance to rehearse in these things, but all of us have found in, pieces we knew really well in this Palestrina program, like Secret Service and things, but also brand new pieces that we hadn't previously discovered, we've really fallen in love with as an ensemble.
Yeah, I'd echo that, and also just to say that obviously in the program we've coloured it with peppered it with a few pieces from other composers. As a way of trying to sort of reflect things that were going on around the same time.
Yeah, we like to try and sort of put things in context, don't we? With what the music that Palestrina himself knew, and then what he went on to do and what he inspired as a result.
Exactly. And with that in mind, let me just first of all share this program. So hopefully this will work for you now. That this is the running order of the program that we're going to perform next week on Friday. And I will get back to our wonderful faces in a minute, but I thought it was just useful to show this for you so you can see the overview and how we've grouped the music in sets. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the first chunk of music and then hand over to Gareth to talk about the counter-reformation. But you'll see that the first set, well, we start off with probably his most famous work, Secret Service, which we never get tired of hearing. It's such a beautiful motet, and it really perfectly exemplifies that kind of controlled style where you get any dissonance is always resolved, and long flowing lines that sort of colour the overall shape and mood of the music without ever being kind of too obsessed with painting individual words, so that it's a sort of broad brush approach and always beautiful singable lines, and that's his sort of calling card. And so that very first piece just gives you that quintessential Palestrina style that we'll discover through the program. There's a little bit more to it than that as well. So we then move to the papal chapel, and obviously that was a place that was absolutely synonymous with Palestrina, and he spent most of his life there. There's a bit of debate about whether he was actually even born in Palestrina, the town that has his name, or whether he was actually born in Rome. But certainly from an early age, he spent his working life, possibly even as a chorister, in Rome, and was associated with the papal chapel, various different branches of it, as well as a few of the big Roman churches. That was his career, rooted in one city. And that's one thing that we found really interesting about Palestrina, actually, is that unlike a lot of the Renaissance composers of the day, he really was linked to one place. And so we wanted to reflect that in this first set, the papal chapel, Josquin Salve Regina, Arca Paternoster, and the Palestrina Tuus Petrus. So I'll just give you a really brief overview now, stopping the sharing. I think this will work. Yes, great. So Josquin is the first piece that we come to after our sort of Palestrina calling card. And this is such a wonderful motet. This is one, obviously, that we explored for the Josquin anniversary in 2021. And I think it's now approaching possibly our most performed piece, actually. It seems to come up in nearly every program.
Pretty much every concert this year, isn't it? I think we've sung it in.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not only in this program, but also in our, Golden Renaissance Greatest Hits program that we performed in Boston earlier this year. So, I mean, this year alone, we must be doing it 50 times, I think. Just in concert alone, let alone rehearsals. And we just never really get bored of singing it. It's just such an exciting piece, and like an incredible piece, actually. He's doing clever things with canons and chant and all the rest of it, but it's just a wonderful, exciting piece of music that paces everything really well. And it's got these three, it's in 5 parts, but the 3 middle parts are sort of tenor stroke alto parts. So you get this really thrilling sound of these tenor and altos blending together. So that is always great fun to sing. And the next piece, the Arca del Partennostro, Nostro, is a particular favourite of mine because I get to sit down because it doesn't have sopranos in it. In fact, Gareth or Ben, do you want to tell us a bit about that, given that I don't get to sing it?
Well, yeah, I think this was one of those sort of discovery pieces, wasn't it, Ben? The a piece I don't think any of us had ever sung before, but it's a really sort of thick, dense Flemish texture. Very few rests for lots of the parts. You get these big sort of walls of sound of eight voices. And then we have experimented with adding a few false relations into it that were sort of implied in the music, but they're not notated explicitly. And yeah, it's one that seems to kind of really it's really satisfying to sing.
Mm. Not really a composer I knew at all, but it has that real richness of gombe, a very similar sort of style, I feel.
Mm,
And it's a fantastic piece. We really enjoy singing it, actually. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an absolute cracker, and it's always wonderful. And actually, it will sound fantastic in St Paul's Church. That acoustic will be absolutely ideal for it, I know. And then we move to another classic piece of Palestrina, the Tu es Petrus. So this is obviously You Are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. And of course, the papal chapel was the Vatican, was the church, was St Peter's. So that's particularly appropriate to kind of represent his time at the papal chapel. And this is wonderfully, I mean, I'm sure it's familiar to many people, wonderfully confident piece that really uses this sort of controlled six voice texture, two soprano parts, two tenor parts, so you get this nice sort of high exciting sound, and it's sort of showing off the glories of the papal chapel, really. So that's the way we round off that set. I'm just going to share our program again so Gareth can give you a little overview of the next set, which is the representing the counter-reformation.
Yeah, so obviously Counter-Reformation was pretty central to Palestrina's working life. It was in sort of full swing by the time he came to sort of compositional maturity. And that had various well, the Council of Trent was pretty important in sort of reaffirming Catholic doctrine in the face of the sort of opposition of the Protestant Reformation. And when that concluded in 1563, there were various things that sort of came out of it, which, and the ones of most importance for musicians were that clarity of text in music was of the utmost importance. The words needed to be audible for the and intelligible for the listener, whereas obviously previously in the 16th century, and you'll probably hear in the sort of Josquin and the Arcadelt, the text is it's a gorgeous sound, but the text is not as intelligible as it is in later 16th century music. And so we've put together a couple of pieces from the Song of Songs. So Palestrina's Nigra Sum and Victoria Trahe Me Poste. Victoria, of course, was in Rome in the late 16th century and probably met Palestrina, or certainly, was very familiar with his work, and he seems to be the composer sort of most associated with his style. And in those, yeah, the text is paramount. It's very sort of certainly those two song settings is very heart on sleeve, and I know that I'm the newest member of the Stile singers, but Nigra Sum has certainly, I think, been in the repertoire pretty much from the beginning. I think, hasn't it, Kate?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
The very first concert back in, yeah, well, I don't even want to mention it was a long time ago. But yes, it certainly has been for many years, decades, in fact.
But it's a piece that's sort of it's very emotional, and it's been really in the blood of the group for such a long time. And quite interesting, it was probably intended not actually for liturgical use, ironically, even though it's obviously a sacred Latin motet. That was another Counter-Reformation thing, was that they encouraged personal devotion. So it probably would have been sung in a kind of non-liturgical context, maybe almost as entertainment, say, at home, but certainly not as probably part as a religious service, more of a sort of sacred madrigal, really, which is quite an interesting take. Again, we think of Palestrina as this kind of pristine academic style, but actually, this Nigra Sum's got some really gritty moments that we really try to bring out in the text. And then finally, we conclude the first half with perhaps the piece most associated with the Counter-Reformation in all music, really, the Credo from Missa Pape Marcelli. And you may be familiar with the story that this is the piece that supposedly saved complex polyphonic music from the Reformers' axe. They were considering banning it entirely or making it a really sort of homophonic style so that the words were intelligible. But the story goes that this mass setting proved to the church authorities that it was possible to have complex polyphonic music, and it's in six parts, so much more than the usual four parts than you might have elsewhere. It was possible to have six-part music and still be able to understand the text. And it may be quite a tall tale that brought us to that stage, but it's very true that if you compare it to other masses of the time, it is noticeably more clear. And I certainly find when singing it that there's a kind of tremendous internal momentum to each phrase. Obviously, there's a lot of text to get through in the credo, but it just naturally leads on the way he's set the text. It's just so intuitive, I find.
Yeah, and I think it's also amazing how that myth seems to have endured. And seems to be really widespread, like particularly in Europe, on the continent. People are, oh well, of course Palestine is famous because of the mass and because of this story is completely believed by a lot of people. Whether or not I read quite a lot about it, and it seems like the evidence is fairly scant, really.
Yeah.
But there's something appeals to people about that, I think.
Yeah, and I think even in Palestrina's time, or the 16th century at least, that peace was clearly held up because later, just after Palestrina's death, there appear to be arrangements made of Papa Marcelli by later composers who knew Palestrina. So clearly, this piece, there was something about this piece, even if the story has been embellished somewhat over the years. There's clearly something about this piece that makes it special.
Well, I certainly would encourage people to listen out for the very final amen because
Oh
it's
yes.
absolutely thrilling. So yes, if nothing else, that bit is worth the 9 minutes of polyphony beforehand, and then you get this wonderful amen at the end. So he sort of lets loose, having tried to be quite clear with words, etc. He lets go a little bit at the end.
Yeah, it's
So
almost
yeah,
symbolic, isn't it? Um,
um, let me share the program, and Ben can tell us a little bit more about the next section um, of the program. I think that's working now. Straight after the interval, so the Superflumina, and then this little trio of pieces, intriguingly entitled "A Time of Turmoil."
Yes, we kick off the second half with Super Flumina Babylonis, which is probably one of his better known pieces, and has this perhaps typical Palestrina style that everyone knows and loves. But we wanted to illustrate the full depth of his abilities, and perhaps it's to pick out one piece in this next section. Peccantem me quotidie is a piece which really plumbs the depths and perhaps that's because it was written around the time he was going through immense turmoil in his life. He lost a brother, two sons, and finally his wife to illness in the 1570s. And um, I think, I mean, I won't go on too much about the history of that side of things, but I think it's pretty clear from this setting of Pecantum that he's in deep sorrow here, and he's demonstrating within that sorrow an extraordinary ability to show color and these plangent lines and extraordinary rich harmony, which we wouldn't normally necessarily associate with Palestrina. Certainly before we started exploring this music, it suddenly stood out as this extraordinary change of color somehow. And I think you can hear the turmoil that was going on in his life around that time.
I loved it that there's such a wide sort of vocal range in the piece. There's a bit that
Mm.
says "Qui are in Inferno," where everyone goes right down into their bootstraps, down in the depths, who for those who are in hell, literally, I think the translation. But then when you get to Miserere at the end, "Have mercy on me," it's kind of like the sopranos suddenly go up to their highest note, and it's almost sort of screaming out, "Please have mercy." It really is incredible.
Yeah, it's an amazing
Yeah.
piece, and you'll see in the program when you come to the concert on Friday that things took a slightly happier turn because the next two pieces illustrate that, without wishing to spoil things, spoiler alert here, his life got a bit better, so we kind of then revisit some happier times in his life. Let me share the program one more time, or no, penultimate time. I think we've got two more little sets to talk about. So the next, after this exploration of his tumultuous private life around the sort of 1560s, 1570s, we then come to this little set of In Praise of Music. And here is a sort of little palette cleanser, really. This wonderful two pieces that are both written by Palestrina in various different ways, addressing the subject of music. So Exultate Deum is probably familiar to many people, and it's a straightforward, happy psalm text, which just talks about lots of different instruments and praising the Lord in various different ways. And it's brilliantly descriptive, and the way he writes it is almost like a madrigal in terms of colouring each of these instruments in a way that you can pick out these individual words. So quite different from a lot of his other pieces, and a really exciting piece to sing. And then at the end of that set, we have this Lassus Musica Dei Donum, which is a really interesting text, actually. It's a sort of secular text. It talks about music taming wild beasts and the hearts of men, and all the different things that music can do, and the power of music. So that's a little sort of set about almost self-reflective in a way, about musicians talking about music among themselves.
We think that Lassus and Palestrina probably met, or at least encountered, well, were familiar with each other's work because Lassus came to Rome very early on in his career. So we think that they probably were at the very least aware of each other, if not met each other.
Alongside the wonderful Exultate Deo by Palestrina, we have another motet by him, which also addresses the theme of music and musical instruments, but in a rather different way. Laudate Dominum in Tympanis is scored for 3 separate choirs, so 3 choirs of 4, 12 separate voice parts in total. And it's great fun for us to sing individual voice lines separated out into 3 different choirs. And then we've got one final little set of music that Gareth can take us through here. About what happened afterwards.
Yeah, as I say, we give some further context to our programs about, even though we're focusing on Palestrina. So what came after him, and so Felice Nerio was his successor as composer to the Papal Chapel, and there's quite a substantial body of music left by him, quite often in sort of 8 parts, quite big stuff. This is actually just a 4-part Christus Factus Est, and it kind of builds on Palestrina's fundamentals of clarity, but because it's just a generation later, there's kind of a hint of we're moving towards sort of Baroque, bit more tonal harmony, a bit more angst. Obviously, it's a text for Holy Week, so there is that in the text, inherent in the text anyway. But it's a sort of beautiful little miniature, which may be familiar to lots of sort of church choirs because it appears in one of the Oxford European sacred music books. So it's sort of become a staple of lots of church choirs. But it's nice in Stile to have the chance to really get inside the music of that one. So that's a nice little miniature. And then we come to one of my favorite pieces on the program. Again, I don't actually sing it because it's an 8-part piece. We're a 12-part ensemble, so it's better that we do it 1 to a part. And I get to sit and listen to this wonderful piece by Allegri, Christus Resurgens. Of course, Allegri is famous for his Miserere setting, but this Christus Resurgens is a completely different beast, utterly joyous Eastertide piece. I think my favorite bit is always the Vivit Deo bit. He liveth unto God, and those of us, the 4 of us who don't sing in that piece, when we go off into the wings, we're always bopping along to this bit in particular. I don't know what you guys think singing it, but certainly we enjoy listening to it.
Oh, it's really exciting to sing, so I hope it's as exciting to listen to.
Yeah. And then finally we have the Cheryl Francis Hode piece, which is very exciting because we commissioned that this year and we've been performing it for the first time. And I think really interestingly, she decided for a text for this piece, A Gift of Heaven, she decided she didn't set a sacred or a secular text. It is actually a dedication. It is Palestrina's own words that she has set. And it's a dedication from a publication he made of a book of his. And it's dedicated to Philip of Austria, who's perhaps better known as Philip II of Spain. Basically kind of trying to get more money out of him, saying, I'm good at my job. You want to get me to do more of this, don't you? Wink, wink. So it's set for a tenor solo as setting Palestrina's words, and then we provide a sort of polyphonic backing to the rest of it. Ben probably has more insight onto the solo bit because he's the one who's had to do various ones of it. As a bass, it's actually a relatively easy job in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it's quite unusual for us to have a sort of to have a soloistic piece like that with choir backing. Actually, it's Jonathan who who sings this piece best of the tenors, but he it's quite an amazing setting. We all play our part. It's in 12 parts, so it's very interesting.
And there's a
I
great
think
quote, isn't there? Of he quotes Mr. Papa Marcelli. She quotes Mr. Papa Marcelli within it musically,
yes.
but
Yeah.
it's kind of it's in her own really quite quirky style. The harmony is completely kind of sent into overdrive, really, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's sort of nice, sort of pastiche, but sort of slightly tongue in cheek, but also kind of respectful, I think.
Yeah.
She treads the line quite finely. It's very nice.
Yeah. So it's been a really fun piece for us to get to know. Obviously, I could count on one hand or maybe two hands at max the number of non-16th century pieces that we do in Stile. But it's been really fun to get to know this piece, and we've had a chance to perform it in all over the place this year. And so we hope you enjoy that as the conclusion to this program.
Thank you so much, Gareth. So I don't think there's much more for us to say other than I really hope that you enjoy the concert program. And I think there are tickets still left, as Kathy said. So if you haven't had the chance to get one of those, do go and grab one now. Either a real ticket for real in life attendance or a virtual ticket for the later streaming concert. And I know they always do an amazing job with the video and sound. So I'm in awe of what they managed to produce. It's fantastic. And we look forward to seeing many of you next week on Friday.